Let's get right to Aishah Hasnie, who has all the details from that face-to-face. Aishah.
Hey, Todd and Carly, good morning to you. And we just got a readout from the White House on this big bilateral meeting between the two presidents. So I'll read a couple of notes that I've taken away from this statement. They talked about expanding market access for American businesses into China. Remember, the president brought this delegation of 16 CEOs from different business and tech backgrounds. They also talked about wanting more progress on stopping the flow of fentanyl. That's something the president brought up. Now, the Chinese purchases of American agricultural products was also something that was brought up in these discussions. And President Xi expressed interest in purchasing more American oil to reduce China's dependence on the strait in the future. That's a really big takeaway. So we're going to focus on that as well. Also, both countries agree that Iran can never have a nuclear weapon. And after reading through this readout, there was really nothing in there that said that China was going to help pressure Iran in any way to ending the conflict. We were wondering if that was going to come up. It has been an incredibly busy day for the president, touring around all over Beijing. The president began his day with a visit to the Great Hall of People at the heart of the city, where he was greeted by President Xi. The delegation heard the national anthem along with a 21-gun salute, and the two leaders then had a bilateral meeting, and the president commented on his relationship with Xi. Watch.
You and I have known each other now for a long time. In fact, the longest relationship of our two countries that any president and president has had, and that's, to me, an honor. We've had a fantastic relationship. We've gotten along. When there were difficulties, we worked it out. I would call you and you would call me, and whenever we had a problem, people don't know, whenever we had a problem, we worked that out very quickly. We're going to have a fantastic future together.
So once the bilateral was over, we actually got several statements from the Chinese side almost immediately. This is a not so thinly veiled warning from the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs spokeswoman on Taiwan, the issue of Taiwan, which, by the way, gets a ton of its defense weapons from the U.S. This is what she wrote. President Xi stressed to President Trump that the Taiwan question is the most important issue in China-U.S. relations. If it is handled properly, the bilateral relationship will enjoy overall stability. Now, here's the moment a reporter shouts a question at the two leaders about Taiwan, and watch what happens next.
How were your talks, sir?
It's great.
Did you talk about Taiwan?
Great place. Incredible. China's beautiful.
Yeah, neither wanted to say anything about it. Meanwhile, Iran looming in the background as a report overnight indicates that Iran may have taken a vessel near the Strait of Hormuz. While President Trump says he does not need Xi's help in ending the conflict, administration officials did go into this bilat saying that they were hoping to see China play a role, considering that it buys the largest amount of Iranian crude.
We've made the argument to the Chinese, and I hope it's compelling. The Chinese have ships stuck in the Persian Gulf because setting up a system that says we're going to let certain ships through but others not, it's easier said than done. It's a huge source of instability. It threatens to destabilize Asia more than any other part of the world. It's in their interest to resolve this. We hope to convince them to play a more active role.
And remember, there were a huge contingency of CEOs that were present at the ceremony today. We saw them leaving the bilateral early, meaning that the president did what he said. He was going to make his first ask to Xi to open up China to these companies. Of course, the guys, they want to do business in China as long as it's safe to do business in China. The state banquet is up next, and then the first interview with Sean Hannity airs later tonight. We will find out much more directly from the president on what he got out of President Xi today.
Yeah, which
Back
will
to you.
certainly be something to watch, and a great wrap-up, Aishah, of what's taking place so far. Notable and very interesting to hear what is coming out of China, with a heavy emphasis on Taiwan, and the United States focusing, of course, on the economy. Iran and fentanyl, not mentioning Taiwan at all. But the president, as you just played, said that the meeting went great. And now it's on to dinner time coming up pretty soon with this state banquet. Aishah Hasnie live for us 12 hours ahead in Beijing. Aishah, thank you so much. Let's bring in the director of the Heritage Foundation's Asian Studies Center, Jeff Smith. Jeff, thank you so much for joining us. So want to get your overall thoughts on what's taken place so far and your read on what's coming out both from the White House and from China.
Well, I'll tell you, so far, I like what I'm hearing. We're getting sort of standard stock diplomatic language out of the Chinese side. We have heard comments on Taiwan, but what we heard from the Chinese spokesman is the standard fair diplomatic talking points that Chinese side tends to give their American counterparts in almost any meeting. They sort of say, the U.S. staying out of the Taiwan issue is the key to stability in the relationship. I was not particularly concerned by anything that I heard there, and as far as I can tell, the U.S. side has not offered any strategic concessions on Taiwan. And so the sort of principle of first do no harm applies when we're talking about Taiwan, and here I think that's been satisfied. Hopefully we can move to sort of more constructive points of conversation, like opening up market access in China for U.S. exports.
Your read and my read are exactly the same. I'm just going to couch it in different terms. A lot of generalities, not a lot of specifics. And that leads to this. Will anything of substance, any specifics, truly be accomplished so long as both sides refuse to budge on Taiwan, Jeff?
I don't think anything positive is going to be accomplished on Taiwan. What I do think there is opportunity for is sort of tactical horse trading on things. You know, there are certain things you can do with the Chinese. You can negotiate on things like lower tariff rates, better market access, agricultural exports. If China wants to buy more U.S. soybeans, if China wants to buy more Boeing airplanes or U.S. oil and gas, I am fine with that. What I don't want to negotiate on is strategically sensitive issues like Taiwan. I don't want to be giving up strategically important U.S. products like U.S. advanced chips. And so far, we haven't seen any major concessions by the U.S. side. I hope that holds.
One of the big things to come out of this meeting that we just learned is that President Xi expressed interest in purchasing more American oil to avoid being so reliant on the Strait of Hormuz. Your reaction to that fact?
Hey, I'm fine with that. The more that China wants to be dependent on U.S. energy exports, that's okay with me. Like I said, there are things that we can horse trade with China on. There are even exports that China can do in the United States that don't necessarily affect the strategic balance of power, that don't affect American security or American prosperity. We're willing to buy more sort of textile exports from China. What we don't necessarily want is Chinese strategic investments in the U.S. Something that makes me nervous is Chinese electric vehicle exports. I think, you know, those are so heavily subsidized by the Chinese state that they risk really eviscerating the American car industry if we were to let them in en masse. So the key really when negotiating with China is to know what we can horse trade on, what is on the table, and what needs to be off the table from the start. So far, so good.
Another key, though, Jeff, and we'll leave it here after this, will China, at the end of these negotiations, at the end of these summit, actually stick to what they agreed to? Because recent history, past history, dictates that they do not typically do that. Oftentimes, a week after a summit like this, they'll renege. So what do you think?
I think you're right about that, and I think that's part of the reason we're having this summit to begin with. One of the ways we've framed this engagement is as kind of a compliance checkpoint after Busan. So President Trump, President Xi met in South Korea last October. We saw this as a way to sort of check in 6 months later and see, are the Chinese upholding their commitments? I mean, part of the reason that China hawks get nervous around the time of these summits is that historically the Chinese diplomats have frankly outplayed their American counterparts. To victim, we have sort of fallen trapped to this engagement construct that China likes to create, and China has not fallen through on its commitments. And I think President Trump is right to have these checkpoints every few months and say, look, if you're not meeting your commitments, we're going to scale up sanctions or export controls or tariffs, and we need to hold to that.
Yeah, it's a great reminder. This conversation clearly went well, and that's great on the surface, but you always do have to remember that Xi is playing the long game to overthrow the United States as the leading superpower. So there is also
the big nugget there. Yeah.
The big nugget there. All right, Jeff Smith, director of the Heritage Foundation's Asian Studies Center, we thank you so much for joining us.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.